I just want to say I started doing research in the area of gender and gaming 6 years ago as a research assistant on school-based studies of girls' gaming clubs. Then through my own dissertation work that explored, from a sociocultural perspective, the gendered landscapes of competitive professional video game tournaments. Now as a collaborating researcher on the Feminism and Games initiative that Emma so eloquently introduced, I'm hoping to carry out an interventionist study aimed at what I loosely call gaming masculinities. By this I mean those destructive codes, systems, and practices through which gaming still largely, despite the good news that we've heard from Kristen and somewhat on the panel today, though not really, largely remains the domain of straight dudes. In the time I have today, I want to briefly outline the problem, gaming masculinities, the toxic byproduct of which is the continued marginalization of women, as well as queer, differently abled, or the racially and ethnically other, from the more lucrative and prestigious centers of game production and play. I want to go from there to go over a couple studies I took part in that lay the groundwork for the FIG initiative led by Jennifer Jensen and Susanna Castell. And then I want to provisionally sketch the aims and possible tools of an interventionist research agenda that could and hopefully will jam and disrupt the ongoing production of gaming masculinities. I want to be really clear up front here about my purposes, since I realize it can seem a little bit facetious, having been given the opportunity to present in an event on women in games, to talk about how we could fix boys. Fix in the discursive sense. But the kind of interventionist work I want to start sketching out today will be an attempt to shock boys, again in the discursive sense, and young men into thinking and acting differently with regards to gaming and gender, and to show them how some of the taken for granted attitudes and actions of them and their peers can be so poisonous. This is, I think, precisely what one feminist project on gaming and gender could be about. And I think that as a feminist who also happens to be a male, it is work that I might be well suited for. It's no mystery, I think, to anyone in this room that games play a central role in the identity work of boys and young men. Far from being regarded as geeky or weird, being good at games is, in many circles, a natural part of being a full-blooded dude. The way that gaming masculinities operate, like the gender orders we see in sports, the military, and other conventionally male-dominated domains, is through the exercise and application of misogyny and homophobia towards anyone that does not measure up to those impossible standards. In my research with gaming communities in schools, at LAN parties, and at pro-gaming tournaments, I've consistently seen boys competing with one another over who best embodies the stereotypical ideals of this masculinity. This is a propensity for aggression and violence, extreme individualism, and the desire and ability to inflict humiliation over those less capable. This code is popularized, of course, by many AAA games, though not all of them. The objectification and marginalization of women in many facets of gaming culture globally is an effect of this gaming masculinity, of boys basically jockeying for position against one another, in which straight boys and men are still regarded as, in some circles, the only legitimate users and producers of video games. What's so interesting to me, having documented dozens of public gaming events, is the role that women do get to play at these types of places. Typically, as is shown here at the World Cyber Games in 2008 in Germany, women are positioned as props for young men to take photo ops with. The goal here, presumably, is to show everyone that despite the fact that they've just spent hours in close quarters with other sweaty dudes in an intense, emotional-fueled exercise, they're not gay. We get it. So in light of gaming masculinity being a stubborn and persistent barrier to more diversity in gaming culture, I want to recognize the really awesome forms of pushback that we're already seeing against this deeply reactionary gender order. One example of an intervention into play as usual is fatuglyerslutty.com, in which mostly female gamers publish misogynist messages they've received over Xbox Live or other gaming fora, alongside the offending player's handle. This is a kind of shaming the Johns, which has made public and visible the everyday forms of verbal abuse that female gamers face. So I want to turn now briefly to some interventionist research that I've had the privilege of being part of as a research assistant on 2 federally funded projects run by Jennifer Jensen at York University and Susanna Castell at Simon Fraser University. Our activities in these projects were aimed at providing girls in an underprivileged school in the Toronto District School Board with a safe space to game. By giving a space for girls to access and get better at a wide range of games, including those normally associated with boys' play, we were able to do a couple things. First of all, we were able to show how gameplay preferences and abilities and their normative stories like girls like exploration over competition, or boys are better at action games, are far from biologically determined, according to players' differently sexed bodies or brains, but are a product of differing levels of access and entitlement, in other words, gender. Secondly, we gave the boys in the club, and this is what I loved, the opportunity to be soundly kicked in their butts by girls at video games. In doing so, I think we effectively inverted the conventional gender order and dynamic that most boys and girls of that age and older are used to when playing games. This was kind of a happy side effect of our larger goal in the study, but one I'd like to focus on a little more in the context of my research on the Feminism and Games initiative. So following on this interventionist ethnographic research, and taking a cue from FatUglyOrSlutty.com and other attempts at making the pernicious effects of gaming masculinity more visible, I want to end by clarifying what I think my core research question with regards to Feminism and Games initiative could be, and on sketching out some possible tools for carrying out this interventionist work. Here are some ideas for a kind of workshop, or what I'm calling, secretly or not so secretly to myself, the D-Bag Bootcamp, on disrupting gaming masculinities. Again, these are just throwing them out there. We could borrow from anti-racist activist pedagogy popularized by a 1960s experiment called Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes, and set up situations where boys are subjected to the same scorn, alienation, and exclusion with regards to gaming that girls are. We could give boys and young men the tools to think critically about misogyny and homophobia in games, and challenge them to think and act differently with regards to gaming and their everyday practices. And my personal favorite, we could invite female competitive gamers in to school boys in video game play and to basically kick their butts around for a couple hours. As you can tell, I'm just at the start of thinking through what an interventionist project that is feminist-driven but focusing on masculinities might look like. So I thank you sincerely for hearing me out today, and I look forward to chatting with anyone who's interested about carrying forward this work with me. Thank you.